Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, should I say. Or should I say Chag Sameach Chanukah? Because we're not only in a Shabbat, but we're also celebrating Chanukah in this time. And that is why this word is so powerful. And thank you, Quibus, for the word. Thank you, Abba Father, for this week has been a week of very stern word. And I think it's because of the timeline that we are in terms of what Father's trying to do in the hour that we're in right now, because I think time has run out. It's not even the time is running out. I think time is run out already, because when we see the things unfolding upon the earth right now, you know, it's just not going to get any better. And it's so difficult because I feel these days I'm a person, even yesterday, you know, last night I was talking to people, and it's so difficult for me because I feel like something that is so different to who I really am. I'm a very positive person. I'm a very positive person. I've always been positive. I'm an exhorter. I'm an encourager. That's what I do. But I cannot speak a positive thing when I see negative things. How does one continue to say, next year is going to be a year of double blessing? How can you say that? How can I tell people next year you're going to be doubly blessed when you know what's coming, what's on your doorstep? And sometimes it would be better for you not to even know, because then you can just be this wonderful person like everybody else around you. You know? Can make it easy for everybody. And it's so difficult because I've always been a person to turn around and say, no, don't speak negative. Don't speak negative. I'm always rebuking everybody for speaking negative. Now I feel like I am that person that is now speaking negative, but it's not that I'm speaking negative. It's the reality. And you know what the difference is? The difference is even when I see something. So I'll see something like all of a sudden the masses gathering and they're all coming together and they're protesting, 1 million people protesting. And then there in the UK, thousands of people protesting. And why in my spirit I'm saying they shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't even be coming together to protest. They shouldn't do that. They should just be on their knees, seek the Father, stay in their houses and not be doing this. Because the protesting is what they want. They're going to kill you off with that protesting. They're going to put spray on you. They're going to contaminate you. And then, you know, I feel things, I know things in my spirit, and I'm saying, not a good thing, not a good thing. But at the same time, I can't tell the people because they're going to say, but you're just being negative. Like this morning, I had a friend of mine send me a video, how they gathered together at the Kotel, the Jews, and they're busy singing for Mashiach to come. Wow, it was beautiful. It was so beautiful to sit there and watch all of them together at the Kotel. It just brought tears to my eyes where I thought, sure, Father. And the one side of you turns around and says, how wonderful, everybody's going to sit there, come together, singing for Mashiach to come. But on the other hand, they're going to receive the false Mashiach that is about to come. And as they're singing for Mashiach to come, who's going to come? Who is the Mashiach that's going to come first? The false one, the one that they're going to receive. So do you see, then I had to again be this prophet of the doom and the gloom. And say, yes, this is wonderful. It's wonderful to see. But remember, there's a false Messiah coming before the true one comes. So let's not get excited. Instead of me standing there looking at this and saying, wow, I've got to stand and say, Father, have mercy. As they're crying for Mashiach, I pray that in this time of Chanukah, that they will open their eyes and see the true Mashiach, Yeshua Mashiach. That they would see him. And that they will not accept the false, because the false one's going to come before the true one comes, and we know. And if I just listen to 4 years ago, when I sat with the head Sanhedrin of the land, what happened? He was telling me, when I said to him, do you think Mashiach is coming soon? And he looked at me and said, Mashiach is not coming soon. Mashiach is already here. It's just a matter of time before he's revealed. That's amongst the Orthodox Jews. So all of them busy holding hands, having to worship, are ready to receive the false. And that's what religion is taking them into. Because that's what the head Sanhedrin of the land has spoken. And that's what they're preparing for. And that's what the Bible tells us. The man of perdition is about to be revealed. And this is exactly what Father told me. And sometimes I sit and I say, I hear these things and I think, maybe it's just me, I'm going mad. And then I hear another prophet. I read something now in this week, just in this week, yesterday, I think it was, yesterday that I heard a prophet, another prophet that's been warning of things to come. And she said, I got this thing in the post, and all of a sudden I said, what is this big announcement thing? And this whole thing was about the man of perdition, the anti-Messiah is about to be revealed. He's coming. It's the same word that he gave me. So today we're going to look at this Torah portion reading. And as we're going to look at the Torah portion reading for today, Vayeshev, he continued living. We are going to see. It was amazing because when I started looking into this Torah portion reading today, how Father actually linked up this Torah portion reading together with Chanukah. How it's just like intertwined. And how it's intertwined into exactly Joseph's life, intertwined into Yeshua's life, and exactly how Joseph, the role that Joseph takes, is so much the role of Yeshua. And it's so much even lined up even with what Quibus has shared with us this morning. It's all lined up. Everything's lined up. It's lined up with the word that we received this morning from the Father. Because when the Father speaks, he speaks by his Ruach. And his Ruach is one voice. It's his voice. And that's the thing in the hour and the time that we're in now. My sheep will hear my voice. And the voice of a stranger they shall not follow, because his voice is not going to speak something that's contrary. So that's why when we're starting to hear teachers and we're starting to hear prophets and we're starting to hear all these different preachers, and if we know what he's speaking by his Ruach, and now we're starting to hear something that's different, we're going to start to hear and say, that's not a word that's coming from him. So that you start to discern what's from him and what's not from him. Because discernment is so important at the hour that we're in. I mean, every day I am receiving more and more people that I know that's falling off the path. Every day. Just this morning, again, I was in that place. I said, Father, I can't believe it. Here was this woman. I spent 10 days. We spent 10 days together in Israel. 10 days. 10 days we spent together in Israel. Really, she walked through the land. She herself is a prophet. She herself has a very strong prophetic anointing on her life. Powerful. Sees things. Sees dreams. Then we spent 10 days together in Israel as they did a tour with us. And I mean, when we do tour, the Father is working. Then after that, I happened to be in that area where I sat and preached about the name. For 2 solid days, I preached about the name. And then, this morning, Elsie shows me her Facebook. She puts a picture on Facebook with this little cartoon picture. crying out, this man crying out in the name of Jesus, and then Yeshua, and then this, and then that, and then at the end it says, do you think he's not going to call, do you think he's not going to answer you? He didn't write the New Testament in Hebrew, he wrote it in Greek. So I just stood there and I said, Father, another one has fallen. And these are people that have been given the opportunity to be given truth. And this is where I am right now. And this is what I'm saying right now. If people are going to start rebelling when truth comes, you need to understand there's a difference between the fact that I hear and I hear it and I hear it and I hear it, and then I get taught it. I see it in scripture, I get taught it. But then if I blatantly decide to say, imagine my father speaks to me and says to me, this is what I want of you, this is what I want of you, this is in the word, my people will know my name in that day, and this is what I speak and this is what I say, and then truth comes and more comes, and then all of a sudden you turn around and you say, no, I'm not going to do that. How do you see that child in your eyes? Your own child, how's that own child in your eyes? What does he look like in your eyes? He's rebellious. He's a rebellious child. Because it's not a thing of saying, well, you know what? If the truth has come and if I've heard the truth, then I cannot continue rebelling. But truth comes and I stand in awe because we think at this time that truth can come, but we just continue to just rebel because it's not okay. And I think exactly what Kobus was trying to cross very sternly is the fact that we cannot continue sinning now. We need to make a decision to say, well, if this is the truth, I'm going to have to turn. And so I'm just standing the rest. And you know what? You know where I stand in awe? Where I stand in awe is because, you know, when you can see the picture from the other side, and the picture that I can see is that, and this is the word that he said to me. He gave me this word in Exodus chapter 29, verse 1, and he says, Natalia, I bring you my priests. Equip my priests. So everyone that comes, I know they're priests, and they are being equipped. They are being equipped to become priests. And I always say to people, no person that comes every person that will come is always because they love him so much that the Father's willing to give them truth. And they didn't just arrive there. It's because they truly love him. And then he gives them truth and he gives them teaching. And then the choice is yours whether you're going to receive it or not. And this is what becomes so sad for me, is the fact that I get to the place that I say, Father, you gave them the opportunity to know truth. It's up to them whether they received it or not. It was a choice whether they were going to receive it or not. So this is what we're going to see today, as we're going to be able to look at the life of Joseph. Joseph is going to have to pray for all of us as we start with Joseph. And so it starts right in the beginning in chapter 37 from verse 3. And it says, let's start in verse 2. This is the genealogy of Yaakov. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers. And the young man was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought an evil report of them to his father. So do you see, we need to see right in the beginning, Joseph was young. And Joseph was doing something that many of us sometimes do, Lashon Hara. So Joseph was doing something that we are all guilty of. There isn't one that isn't guilty of the sin, Lashon Hara, which means I bring an evil report of another person. I don't even know if it's truth, but I will speak it. If you have facts and figures about something, then speak it. If you don't, then keep quiet. And sometimes it's better to keep quiet because it says love covers a multitude of sins. So at the end of the day, sometimes the love that you have to have for that person needs to cover that person's sin. I mean, there were times that I've been confronted in my life when someone is speaking to me and saying, oh, you know, this person is so wonderful and they this and they this. And this very person, I'm wanting to turn around and say to them, you know what? You have no idea what this person has done. Can I tell you a little bit about what this person has done to me personally? And if I had done that, it would have destroyed that person in that person's eyes. And that person today has gone to be with a father and never knew that sin of her child, because it wasn't necessary for her to know the sin of her child. And she went to her grave believing that her child was this most wonderful person. And the child is the most wonderful person today. But it wasn't at the time that she was telling me how wonderful he was. But I chose to love, because it says love covers a multitude of sins. And what would I have done if I would have destroyed maybe that mother, that child in that mother's eyes? What would I have done? So do you see, sometimes it's better for us to keep quiet, because Joseph was not innocent in what he did. Joseph wasn't innocent in what happened to him, because Joseph was telling the truth, maybe. He was telling the truth. But he was bringing an evil report. Now, sometimes his father might not have needed to know the evil report of his brothers. And this is where we sometimes get into trouble. So it says, and Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long robe. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and were not able to speak peaceably to him. So as parents, there is a warning for us that we should never love one child more than the other, because what does it do? It births jealousy, and it births hatred in the heart of the children. Because if one is loved more than the other, it births like a hatred and anger. I had to have words with my mother, because my oldest brother was just the saint. My oldest brother never did anything wrong. And it was always, he was hailed. And I had to sit her down and say, nothing that Victor and I ever do in your eyes is ever going to be right, because only Joa is like the saint. And sometimes it's not that we do it on purpose, but I don't think she did it on purpose. But that was hurting me. And then I had to discuss it with her and say, this is just how I felt growing up. And sometimes we need to have those conversations and let go of anger, let go of frustrations that are there, because a lot of these things come and they contaminate our heart. And then we don't understand why we've got anger. We don't understand why we've got. And the reason why is because there's deep issues within us that we haven't resolved. And so Joseph dreamt a dream and told it to his brothers. They hated him even more. So you see, then there's sometimes, I'm going to have to bring this from two sides. I need you to understand, I'm going to bring this from two sides. I'm going to bring this from the side of where there's wrong, but I'm going to bring it from the side of you seeing the good on the other side. Because I want you to see today two scenarios here. So I'm going to bring you first the side of where Joseph was wrong, but then I'm going to bring you the side of where we are going to be today and what we're going to. That we don't need to share with other people, because then people become jealous. And what does jealousy do? Let's go back to the very beginning where jealousy came. Where did jealousy come from the very beginning? The very first time we see jealousy in the Bible was with who? Cain and Abel. But why? Because Cain did not bring the right offering to the Father. And because Cain did not bring the right offering to the Father, what did it do? Cain did not bring the right offering to the Father, and by him not bringing the right offering to the Father, it created a problem, because the Father, Abba Father, accepted Abel's offering, but did not accept Cain, because Cain brought an offering, but Abel brought a righteous offering brought the first fruits. So I want you to see the story between Joseph being righteous, more righteous than his brothers. And I want you to see that what's going to happen to the righteous. So the righteous are going to speak the truth. The righteous are going to say to people, listen, the Father showed me in the dream. The true prophets are going to speak and say, Father showed me this destruction is coming. And what are the unrighteous going to do? The ones that are not walking the ways of the Father, the ones that are not walking set apart to the Father, they are the very ones that are going to come up against us. They are the very ones that are going to stand against you. They're going to speak against you. That are going to be jealous. Understand, if they also come onto Torah, they also walk the path, they also become set apart, they will receive the same blessing as what we receive. All Cain needed to do was do what was right. And if Cain had done what was right, he would have received the blessing from the Father, just like Abel received. Is it not? Don't you think that maybe with Joseph's brothers, if maybe they were also trying to please their father as much as Joseph was pleasing the Father, he would have loved them as much as he loved Joseph? I'm bringing you the two scenarios here. Yes. So there had to be something different about Joseph. Because why was it that Father chose Joseph? There had to be something different about Joseph. Joseph is going to prove throughout the scriptures that he was a righteous man, that he was listening to the Torah of his father Yaakov, maybe more than his brothers did, because he was tattletaling, bringing evil report on them. What were they doing? Maybe they were not quite abiding by Torah. Maybe they weren't quite keeping Torah the way that they should. And now we are going to speak up against them. You understand? And so therefore, we need to understand that we are all in a process. We are all in this process together. And so here we're going to see that Joseph reveals a dream, and the dream is the truth. But now this makes the brothers even more angry. Who does he think he is? Because in this dream he says he dreamt and saw another dream and related it to his brothers and said, see, I have dreamt another dream, and see the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bow down to me. And he related it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamt? Shall we, your mother, and I, your brothers, indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? Now even his father rebukes him. But now, Joseph, you're going overboard. You're speaking these things. First you say the sheaves are going to bow down. Now you say that the stars and, the sun and the moon, all these things are going to bow down to me. What are you doing, Joseph? But listen to the next verse. It says, and his brothers, the other one. Where does it say? And his brother said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Shall you indeed rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. So he dreamt another dream. And then he related it. What is this dream that you have dreamt? Shall we and your mother come and bow down to the earth before you? And his brothers envied him, but his father guarded the word. So you see, there's the difference between Jacob and the brothers. Jacob listened to the dream, but he guarded it in his heart, as if to say, you know what? Maybe my child is seeing something, looked him, but he guarded it in his heart, saying, sure, maybe there's something in this. And you see, that's the difference between where we need to understand. Maybe someone will bring something to us and we don't quite like what they're going to say. And we don't quite agree with what they're going to say. Because at the time, we don't understand. And we're either going to do what they did, which they became even more angry. So it says, and the brothers envied him. Now they envied him and they were angry with him. Or we're going to do just like what he said, just like what Jacob did. He guarded it in his heart. So sometimes we need to be able to take a word and we don't quite accept what's being said. But you know what? I always say, don't shoot the messenger. The postman only delivers the post. The postman is just the postman. He just delivers the message. It's up to you whether you're going to receive the message or not. But in this case, we see them becoming more and more envious. So there's going to become those in these days now that are going to become envious of the righteous. They're going to hate the righteous. It's a Cain generation. Right from the beginning, we've had a separation between two kinds of generation. There's going to be the separation between Cain and Abel's generation. Cain went into rebellion, and Cain eventually went into the land of Nod, which is called the land of unrest. And we are going to see those who are going to take the mark, those who are going to take the vaccine, those that are going to take these things, they're going to become more unrest. They're going to become darker and darker. Now, I got this revelation yesterday. When we're going on about these flies, oh my goodness, have you ever seen so many flies? These flies are really becoming a nuisance. And these flies are everywhere. And we said there has to be... We're trying, and everything is being sold. Even yesterday, Quibus went to try and buy more spray to get rid of the flies. And you know what I got in my spirit? Beelzebub has been released with his demonic angelic hosts. And the flies are almost a symbolic of what it is. They're increasing now. And it's almost like darkness is increasing as these flies are increasing. And they are a nuisance. They are pests. They sit on you. They don't leave you alone. Pests. And this is how it's going to become, this darkness that's going to be around us. People, have you just seen how people behave on the streets? If I just see, Thursday, yes, we were coming back. We'd gone to Joburg side. We were coming back on the highway. Elsie had the flicker. She had the flicker. And there was enough space, more than enough space, and she went in front of the truck. That truck hooted and then came around, and as they came around, they hooted some more. And I said, what is your problem? You can't even do a thing now. This truck is not supposed to be going fast. This truck eventually was overtaking people in the fast lane and trying to, and then the truck almost took a car out. And I sat and I said, Father, from where have we fallen? Where a truck should be getting out of the way into the slower lane to let the cars go past because it's not going to go at the speed of the cars. But no, because it's like this rebellious attitude that is around you. This pestering, and then hooted. And when he came past her, still continued hooting. I said, Father, how are we living in the life that we're in, that this man, what is wrong with him? You can't even just drive on the road like normal because it's just, people are wild. They don't even obey the laws anymore. He was driving on the fast lane, overtaking her on the fast lane because he was so upset. I thought, no. And that's where we are. So you see, this anger is going to raise up. And look and see. I need you to understand the pattern that goes on here. And we must guard for this pattern. Because the pattern starts first with a jealousy. So we need to guard our hearts. Are we perhaps, do we allow jealousy in our hearts? And this has been something that I really have to keep guarding my heart of when I start to see certain things and I start to, then I have to guard my heart and say, okay, Father, show me, is this just me? What is wrong with me? Am I perhaps jealous? Maybe there's some jealousy in me. What's going on here? Is this me? Is it jealousy? What's going on? First it started with jealousy. Look and see, then hatred. He says they hated him, then they envied him. So it started with the jealousy with the brothers, then it turned into a what? A hatred, and then it turned into envy. And from envy, what is it going to turn to? We go a little bit further. What starts to happen? They saw him in a distance, and before he came near, they plotted against him to kill him. Is that not exactly what Cain did to Abel? Cain got jealous. After the jealousy, he hated his brother. And after hatred, he committed murder. And this is exactly what is going to happen. And that is why the Father says we need to guard our hearts, because out of our hearts is going to be what's going to come from the mouth. So we've got to guard our hearts with all diligence, because from there comes the very essence of life. And that's why we've got to protect our hearts in the hour that we're in, because people are going to come up against us. People are going to do things to upset us. People are going to do things all the time. But we have to guard our heart for no hatred, for no envy. We have to guard our hearts. And whatever we do, we're going to have to do out of love. And so that's when we look and we see this pattern unfolding over here. And look and see. Now Reuben, the eldest, the firstborn, he hears this and he wants to rescue Joseph. He wants to come to Joseph's rescue. And he decides and he says, okay, look, he says to them, look, don't kill him. Just put him in the pit because he's going to want to come and rescue him at a later stage. But look and see what happens in verse 26. And I need you to see this because this is very significant for us to understand. Where does the split of the 12 tribes already happen? The split of the 12 tribes did not only start with Solomon. When we come for he is our brother, our flesh, and his brother listened. So yeah, Judah now decides to sell him. And this is already now where you start to see a split. Remember, Joseph is going to be symbolic of the one that's going to be part of the house of Ephraim. Because Joseph's going to have the son, Ephraim and Manasseh. And many times when the father refers to Israel, he refers to Ephraim. And this is when Judah, this is Judah now. Judah is the one that sells Joseph. It's because of Judah. They wanted to kill him, but then Reuben said, no, let's just put him in the pit. But what does Judah say? Let's sell him. Now, it's so sad because in the land of Israel today, Judah does not want Israel back in the land. Judah will not allow Israel back in the land. So even for someone like me that comes from the house of Israel, that I am a Jew, they will not accept me if I don't have documentation to prove it. So Judah is trying to keep out Israel, doesn't want Israel in the land. So only those who can prove their Jewish identity that comes from the house of Yehudah are the ones allowed in the land. But Israel is not allowed. And this already comes from this. Judah was the one who sold out Joseph as opposed to killing him. That is why Judah wants to get rid of his brother Joseph that comes from the lost tribes. And today they're formulating their own tribes. They're bringing in people that they're making their own tribes because they know that the house has to be formulated, but they don't want the house of the lost tribes of Israel to come in. They're formulating their own tribes because it's the religious spirit that is there that is still trying to keep Israel out, selling out his brother. And then he says, come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Interesting. Who were the Ishmaelites? Who were the Ishmaelites? The ones that came from Ishmael. And Ishmael, was he not also a son of who? A son of Abraham. So he gets sold to the Ishmaelites. But Joseph is going to go into the house. This is my proof that I got this morning, that he did marry in the end. He did come. He would have married one that came from the Ishmaelites. Because Joseph's wife was an Egyptian. And he bore 2 sons through her. But I can tell you now that those 2 sons stayed in the bloodline that came directly from Abraham. Because Father's order is always perfect. And so he gets sold by the Ishmaelites. So now it's the Ishmaelites are the sons of Abraham as well. So understand, Joseph is being sold not only by his own, he's being sold by his other half, which is his other brothers on the other side, that is of the house that comes from Ishmael. That was the other son of Abraham. And Joseph is symbolic of Yeshua. And when Yeshua comes, he comes for the whole house. He dies and he brings in the 12 tribes, but not only for those, but also for the Gentiles. He brings the whole house together. So that's where, when Yeshua dies, through his death, he says the whole time, I came for the lost tribes of the house of Israel. And so he brings them all in. And so then we continue to have a look at the life of Joseph. And then we see in chapter 38, we're going to see that, chapter 38 is a chapter that's been put in the Bible that I say, why on earth was this chapter put in the Bible? Because it was not even in between. We're talking about Joseph, and then all of a sudden, here comes Judah. And now we need to understand the bloodline of Judah. And what happens with Judah? Judah, what does Judah do? Judah goes against everything that's come from the bloodline. Now, understand, Judah's going to have to be the righteous bloodline where the Messiah is going to come from. And this is the one that is going to be chosen through where the king is going to come. But look at what Judah does. Judah goes and marries a Canaanite woman. He doesn't marry from his own tribe. He marries a Canaanite woman. And then he bears a son, Er. And if there is a fear that needs to come, even from like what Quibber spoke, how we need to understand sin. Listen to what it says, if we should not be fearing Abba Yahuwah today. But Er, Yahuwah's firstborn, was evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah took his life. And I mean, there's the word of the Father that says, what it say? You disgust me. Something like that. I don't approve of you. There will be those that in the eyes of the Father he's not going to accept because he's been speaking. He's speaking. Do you know what the blaspheming of the Holy Spirit is? The blaspheming of the Ruach HaKodesh is not just a blaspheming of when we're going to blaspheme him, by what we speak. The blaspheming of the Holy Spirit is when he's trying to convict you of sin, and you resist to the point of no return. He hands you over to your own flesh eventually. He will hand you over to your own flesh. So how far will we resist him? And that is why he's speaking harshly now, where he's saying, you're going to continue in your ways. You're going to continue to resist me. You're not going to sacrifice that area that I'm sitting there and I'm dealing with you. It's like the Father said to me on Wednesday. Wednesday night, I was sitting with Carol and I spoke it on Thursday when I had to preach to the ladies' meeting that I had on Thursday. And I said to them, I said, have you ever thought that the level of glory that you are to receive, so if you were to have a glass that is full of water, and that is you, full of water, and there's a little bit missing. That little bit that's missing is only the part that's Abba Yahuwah within you. The more you empty out of that glass, if that glass represents you, and that glass is filled with water to the brim, where's there room for him to dwell and use you? And the more of that water you are pouring out, the more of that you're pouring out, the more of yourself you pour out, the more of yourself you surrender, the more of him is pouring in. You will only carry as much glory as what you are willing to surrender. Yeah. So if the Father says remove this, it's because he wants to fill you with more of his glory, because at the end of the day, whatever is opposing him, he wants to remove. So the more he's telling you, lay this down, it's because he's got a higher level for you to go to of his glory. Because every time you lay down, every time you surrender, less of you and more of him. Less of you and more of him. So whatever is difficult in your flesh, I need you to understand today. I need you to hear today. Oh, it's not taping. It's not taping. From the beginning, it's not taping. I need you to understand today that you need to understand that whatever you are struggling with him that you don't want to lay down, you are missing out. You are missing out on a higher level of glory that he wants you to walk in. We are not being taught that today. We are not being explained that today. And I think if people were to tell people that today, they would start to say, why am I trying to hold on to this little thing? Whatever the little thing is it earrings? Is it food? I don't know what it is. Whatever the Father is that he's dealing with you on, whatever it is that is written in this word that we do not want to adhere to, and if you do not conform to what is written, you are the one that is missing out on the fullness of his glory that wants to be revealed through you. He can only reveal himself through you as much as you surrender yourself so that there can be more of his glory within you. So at the end of the day, Father is wanting us to understand that we need to understand that there is going to be a time ahead of us now that just like Joseph was sold out by his brothers, just like Joseph was put in a pit by his brothers, so is the same going to happen with us. Because that's the persecution that's going to come. You need to understand the persecution that's coming. Biden has already said in America, if he's going to come in, he's already said he's going to take out the Christians are in for a very difficult time. They're in for a very, very difficult time. But this is the things that Yeshua spoke about. Yeshua said in Matthew chapter 24, they are going to hand you over. They're going to hand you over. You're going to have to stand before the Sanhedrin. So for some of us, there's great persecution that's going to come our way. If it means it's in a job that you're in today, and all of a sudden you're going to say, I'm sorry, I will not be tested, I will not be vaccinated. What is going to come your way? You might have to be put in jail for what you've just done. Do you know that in our country, Elsie went and looked at the new legislation. Do you know that if you refuse to be tested, they can actually put you in jail? A test. I'm not even talking a vaccine. I'm talking a test. If you choose to not be tested in this day and age, do you know that our legislation says that you can be put in jail for not being tested? And now they're going to start wanting to test you on the roads. They're going to start wanting to test you everywhere. Wherever you're going to be, they're going to want to start testing you. And these are the things that people have been seeing in their dreams. There's a Lashiba. She's been seeing these things in her dream. They stopped her. They want to test her. In her dreams, how people were being put in concentration camps, in camps. They were being taken on trucks, going to camps. People is starting to show his prophetic people the things that are going to happen. Just like Joseph was being seen. He was seeing something that he didn't understand at the time, but he was seeing ahead. And because he's gone and spoken these things, his brothers hated him. His brothers were envied him. His brothers were jealous of him. And his brothers had now gone and put him into a pit. And that is what we need to understand. Those of your own family are going to sell you out. I need you to hear that today. Your own family is going to sell you out because who sold out Joseph? His own family members. So your own family members are going to sell you out. And they're going to think they're doing it for the greater good. Because this person doesn't have the vaccine. They might just be able to give it to the authority to say, that old house that's there, they don't have the vaccine. Do you understand? Do you understand what's on our doorstep? Do you understand that everything that happens in the land of Israel is going to happen in the nations? And you understand that that is the place where everything will happen. That's why I was very surprised that it came to England. But who was the first ones to turn around and start already zoning places? Israel. Israel has started zoning places that if you want to go to Eilat, like my friends right now go to Eilat, they must be tested. They are being tested because Eilat is known as a green zone. So that's being tested. And so what's going to happen? They've already spoken and they've said when the vaccine, they've just ordered 4 million vaccines. They just sent out a message yesterday to say the people that are not going to be vaccinated, so they're saying we're not going to force it on you. But for those who are not going to receive the vaccine, we are going to put strict measures on those. So what will be the strict measures? You might not be able to travel. You might not be able to go into stores. You will not be able to go to zoned areas that are green zone. So if you've got family there, c'est la vie, you ain't going to go in there anymore. If you have got a job and your job is going to turn around and say to you, you have to be vaccinated, guess what? You are not going to be able to be vaccinated then, and then you're going to have to make a decision to say, well, there goes my job because I'm not going to be vaccinated for this job. I'm not going to do that. And those are the decisions that you are going to have to make. And that is why we need to understand Joseph today, because Joseph is going to paint you a picture and you're going to understand these dreams that these two had. When the father opened up to this to me, I still said to Elsie this morning, I said, you're the way a father opens things up to me. I've never in my life seen this. But he opens it up.
Because now is an hour for us to understand the hour that we're in. So here we see Joseph being sold. Now he comes into Potiphar's house. Could Joseph do anything? Could he fight off his brothers? Was it going to help him to go and stand and petition against all these things? No. He was a lamb led to the slaughter. Did our Messiah come up against all those that were coming up against him? No. He was a lamb led to the slaughter. And what did he say to Pontius Pilate? He said, "You don't take my life." He said, he says, "I have the authority to take your life. I have the authority to be able to condemn you to death." He says, "No authority has been given. You have no authority over me lest that's been given to you. And I lay down my life. I lay it down." And I need you to see today, Joseph is going to paint you a picture the whole time of the Messiah, Yeshua Mashiach, who he is. He's going to paint you a picture. What did Mashiach have to go through? Was his clothes torn? They stripped him of his coat. They took his coat, they stripped it, and then they put blood on it and went and take it back to the father and say, "Look, yeah, your child is dead." So his beloved son, the beloved son of the father, has to die. So you see, Joseph now, in the eyes of his father, is dead. So Messiah, same, he's the beloved of the father that comes for us. He is scourged, he is whipped, he's put, and then he is crucified. So the same as Joseph has had to undergo this. Joseph has been put in a pit. And you know what I always like to see the pit? Joseph was a prophet. And this is one of the things that I've heard someone preach the one time, and I've taken it for my life, and I still hold on to it today. Because the pit means a prophet in training. See, a pit, when a prophet goes into a pit, it's a prophet in training. Because every prophet is going to be put in a pit. There's no prophet that's not going to be thrown in a pit. There's no prophet that is not going to have his own family come up against him. Because if he's a prophet, his family are going to have to come up against him. His family will sell him out if they have to. Like my own brother who turned around and said it was my sister that split the family because I didn't want to do the Christmas and everything with them. I was the one who was responsible for all of us. And so it has been. I mean, my own husband was not even allowed to go to his godmother's 80th birthday. She refused him to go because she didn't approve that my husband was sitting in South Africa and I was sitting in Israel. Can you imagine? Because of that, he wasn't even invited. He was the only one out of the whole family that wasn't invited to the birthday party. All because how dare he allow me to be in Israel and he was there. She didn't approve of that. And because she didn't approve of that, he wasn't invited, the only one out of the whole family. What kind of persecution? All because you want to do what's right in the eyes of the Father. All because he did what he knew was right in the eyes of the Father. He said, "I know that this is the Father's will. I know that the Father's in this." But because of that, persecution will come. So now we start to see Judah. So what does Judah do? Judah goes and Judah marries a Canaanite. And now we see Judah's firstborn is evil in the eyes of the father, and the father's going to kill him. Now, do you think the father is going to be merciful on those that are not going to be obedient now? How much time has he given us? From the time of Yeshua, we've had more than 2,000 years for us to repent. We have no more excuse because now we have the blood of the Lamb. Then we had the prophets. We had the prophets for how many thousand years? We had the prophets. And now since the prophets, another 2,000 years, we have had Yeshua. And still, people are still rebelling against the Father. So he saw him evil, and he took his life. And then Onan, he saw him evil, and he took his life. Because what he did was displeasing in the eyes of the Father, and he took his life because he spilt his seed on the floor. Why did he take him? Because he spilt his seed on the floor. Because seed was being spilt on the altars for other gods. That was part of pagan worship. Everything goes. We will spill our seed on an altar and sacrifice it to other gods. That's what they were doing. And so you see, these are the things that we need to understand, of the things that are going to come, that we need to understand. This is, the Father is not going to take lightly to things. There's going to be things now that are going to start happening where the Father is going to start removing people. He's going to silence people and he's going to remove people. If you're going to keep speaking evil, he's going to silence you. And there's Tamar. And what is Tamar? Tamar is representative of a date. And if you look at the palm tree, it means palm tree. And if you look at the palm tree is righteous. It stands upright and righteous. That was Tamar. Tamar was a righteous woman. Tamar stood for what was righteous. And if you see the sin that is upon Judah today, what is one of the sins that is upon Judah today? Do you know that in the house of Judah today, do you know that a lot of those men go into prostitution? Because what does Judah do? Judah's wife dies and he goes into prostitution. He goes and finds a woman to console him and goes into prostitution. And this woman just happens to be Tamar, and he doesn't know that. And today, a lot of those women, when they sit at the wall and they cry, I feel so sorry for them. I understand their pain. I understand where they're coming from. Because so many of them are sitting there weeping. Because as they are like slaves in their houses, their husbands are running around with prostitutes. And it's a normal thing. You mustn't think it's not normal, because it's very normal. It's very normal. They see it as normal. They are a goyim. As long as it's a goyim is one without Yah, they can go and sleep with them. And it's acceptable. And it's in the Talmud. And so that is one of the sins that comes down upon Yehudah, is the sin of prostitution. And so we have to now be able to cleanse our bloodline, because understand, if you come from the bloodline of Judah, there's the sin of harlotry that's there, the sin of prostitution that is there. And we need to stand and we need to repent for the sin. I mean, when I read this, the first time when I read this, I said, oh, Father, if I come from the bloodline of Judah, then I need to repent for this prostitution that he did, not even knowing that it's his own daughter-in-law. But how amazing is it that the father is going to choose? Because isn't it interesting? Judah chose that wife, Tamar, for his son, Eric. He chose her. He chose Tamar for his son. So I wouldn't be surprised if the one that he chose is maybe not a Canaanite. It doesn't tell you whether Tamar was a Canaanite or not, but he chose her, which I believe she was chosen by the father. And she's the one who brings forth two sons, again, twins, two sons. But the bloodline of Yeshua comes through who? Peretz. Now the name Peretz, that name means brushing forth. It means outburst. It means also wrath. What it means is basically you burst out, you break open, you break out, you violently break forth. Now, is that not everything that Yeshua comes to do with us? Yeshua comes to be able to burst us forth, to burst out by Yeshua's death and resurrection. He burst out, he broke through, he broke open. That's what Peretz means. But it also means Yahuwah's wrath. Because when Yeshua comes, he comes with the wrath of Yeshua. He's going to bring judgment upon the earth. And that's also what Peretz means. And so if you go to Matthew chapter 1, you will see the genealogy in Matthew chapter 1. And in Matthew chapter 1's genealogy, you see that Yeshua comes through the bloodline of Peretz. And he doesn't come through the other. But now what happens? Just when you are walking in the fullness of the Father's call, just when you walk in the fullness of what God Father's called you to, here comes the temptation. Here comes the test. Because you see, first the prophet is going to be put in a pit. Then the prophet is going to have to be tested. Is he going to stand for the Father? Is he going to stand for the Father? Or is he going to bow his knee to those around him? And here comes Potiphar's wife. And what does Potiphar's wife come as? She comes like a Jezebel. She tries to entice him. And that's what Jezebel does. Jezebel will always come and entice the prophets. Starts to speak sweet things to him in his ear. And that's what a Jezebel will do. A Jezebel comes and speaks sweet things in your ear. But you see, you've got to be awake to see the destruction that's on your doorstep. And here comes this Potiphar's wife, and she starts to lure him in to sleep with her. But he's a righteous man. He knows Torah. He walks according to Torah. And what does he do? He flees from her. Now understand, this is a young man. He was 17 years of age. A 17-year-old young man is very virile at that age. Very virile. He could have given into the temptation quite easily. He has this older woman thinking that he's so handsome. He could have given into that temptation. And we need to see that the hour that we are in now, that is the hour that we are in now, where these temptations are coming, where men are falling into temptation of sin, because we are in the time. Every single Torah portion reading is where we are. And we need to guard for the sin of sexual immorality. We need to guard for the sin of sexual immorality. We need to guard for the sin of adultery. And we need to understand the sin of adultery. Because no adulterer will enter the kingdom of heaven. And this is exactly what was being told Joseph. Joseph understood Torah. Joseph understood the 10 Commandments. No adulterer shall inherit the kingdom. You shall not commit adultery. And the problem is, we have not understood adultery in today's age. We have not. We only see adultery because we've gone and, we've gone and slept with someone else's wife. But the truth that the Father's going to want to bring us is going to have to go far deeper than that. Far deeper than that. And that is why Father is going to have to bring everything to surface. And everything to surface is going to have to be the fact that we need to understand the sin of adultery. And the problem is we don't understand that. And Father, give us grace for us to understand this sin. And this is something that I've carried for 15 years. 15 years that I've understood this adultery. Because there was a time in my life that I wanted out of my own marriage. And I thought it would be better that I leave my husband and go with another. Didn't matter who the person was going to be. It didn't really matter. I just wanted out. But the Father even sent a prophet into my life to say to me, the man that he chose for you is your husband. And you know what I said? But I didn't choose him before. I met my husband before I even met the Father. I wasn't even saved when I met my husband. That didn't nullify the fact that he was my husband, because I made a covenant before the Father. Till death do us part. What does it mean, till death do us part? It means as long as the one that is still alive, that you are married to, if we go to Romans, Father, give me grace, please. Sorry, it's Romans chapter 7. Or do you not know, brothers, for I speak to those knowing the Torah, that the Torah rules over a man as long as he lives. For the married woman has been bound by Torah to the living husband. But if the husband dies, she's released from the Torah concerning her husband. So then, while her husband lives, she shall be called an adulteress if she becomes another man's. But if her husband dies, she's free from the part of the Torah, so that she's not an adulteress, having become another man's. Now, you are going to take the scripture and you're going to go pray about it.
Because when we divorced, you know that in the Catholic Church, if you divorced, you were not allowed to remarry. The church would not remarry you. And this is what has been from the beginning. That is why Yeshua needed to die and marry an adulterous people, because why? Israel committed adultery with Abba Yahuwah, and according to Torah, when you've committed adultery, you may not be taken back. So you may not marry that person again. So Yeshua had to die so that that would be released, so that that covenant that was made could be released by his death, so that when he resurrected, he came again. And he could marry adulterous Israel because of death. That's all I'm going to go on that, because at the end of the day, we need to understand that there is a sin that is running rampant right now, and that is the sin of adultery, and there is a lot of adultery going on at the moment. And if we are going to be a set-apart bride, we are going to have to sacrifice for the Father. And this is a teaching that I myself, Brett has asked me how many times to do the teaching. I have sat with this word for many, many years. I speak it to those close to me. I don't speak it to everybody, because it's not an easy word. I've warned many people, and the time is coming now that if you really want to be a set-apart bride, you're going to have to understand that there is consequences that comes from sin. And there's things that are going to need to be put in place for you to make a decision to say, if I am a righteous bride, and if I'm set apart for the Father, this is what is going to be required of me. And I will do a full teaching on this so that people may understand the sin. Because Yeshua said, the one who divorces his wife and marries another will commit adultery. And we have made lots of excuses and said, but this and but that. And we have not been told the truth. And because we've not been told the truth, it's like with everything. We are in a time of truth. And truth is now the hour to be told. And if we are going to be the remnant, then we're going to have to walk in truth. That's just the way it is. And I have had to pray about this for so long, because I'm saying, Father, do you really want to split up families? And the Father said, it's not my will to split up families. I need the sin to stop. How do you stop a sin? If you are, for example, a drunkard, how do you stop drinking? How do you stop becoming a drunkard? You have to stop the alcohol, isn't it? How do you stop the sin of adultery? You have to stop the act, isn't it? If the act is what's causing the adultery, that's what must be stopped. That's why Joseph didn't sleep with her. Because if Joseph would have slept with her, he would have committed adultery. She was a married woman. And he would have committed adultery. So Joseph ran from the sin. How many of us are going to be prepared to run from our sin? To be able to just walk away from that which you know that the Father is not approving of. And this is what it's going to take. I need you to understand, Joseph had to walk away. And this cost him being put in jail because he made a decision for what is right. He made a decision to be able to walk in truth of the word. And for that truth of the word, it cost him to go to jail. Everything costs a price. For you to stand for truth in the hour that we're living in is going to cost you a price in your flesh. We're all paying a price right now. And some of us are paying bigger prices than others. And that's what the Father said to me. Stop counting the cost, Natalia. You are forever counting the cost. Stop counting the cost. The day has come for you to stop counting the cost.
Because no cost is going to be high enough or enough, because you don't even understand what's ahead of you. And every test that you've been tested in right now is going to be for your greater good. Because if you haven't been through those tests, if Joseph wasn't put in that pit, he wouldn't have been able to if Joseph hadn't been ridiculed by his brothers, if he hadn't been through all that persecution of his brothers, if he hadn't been thrown in a pit, he might not have been able to get to this place. And now we need to understand, because when we get to the next section, we are going to see the next section. And the next section is the section of where you're going to see the two dreams of the two men that are going to be in the jail. Two men representing two lots of people again. And what are the two lots of people that they're representing? One is the butler, the other is the baker. And we need to see these two tests for what they are. Because when I looked at this and I said, okay, Father, Joseph does what's right. Joseph lands up in jail. Joseph does what's right. Joseph lands up in jail. And now all of a sudden, while he's in jail again, through him being in jail, what happens? Joseph is going to be able to be lifted up again, and he's in charge of everything there. And now these two men come and they ask him to be able to interpret things. Well, they shared the dream, and Joseph went to interpret. Now, I want to tell you about this. Joseph said to them, so if we go to Genesis chapter 39, from verses 8, it says, and Joseph said to them, do not onto a lure. Relate them to me, please. So the chief cupbearer relates his dream to Joseph and says to him, see, in the dream was for me, and the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded. Its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. And the Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. So I took the grapes and pressed them into the Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in the Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days, Pharaoh is going to lift up your head and restore you to your place. And you shall put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former ruling when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when it is well. So this is the only place that Joseph again makes wrong. Remember me when it is well with you. Please show loving commitment to me and mention me to the Pharaoh and get me out of this house. For truly I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done naught that they should put me into the dungeon. Now, I want to share with you about this very dream and who is the first person that we're going to look at in this dream. The first person is going to represent a people that is willing to drink from the vine, that is willing to be able to have a wine press, that is going to go through a wine press. Remember what he says. He says, I saw 3 branches. The root is Yoshua. The tree itself, the tree itself is Yoshua. The root that it's tapping from is the Father, and the branches is the house of Israel. And he tells us in John chapter 15, he says, I am the vine, you are the branches. And the Father is the vine dresser. Let's go to John chapter 15. Let's read it quickly. I never saw this until Father opened this up to me today. And this is revelation that's coming directly from the throne room, because I have never seen this the way that it is. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Every branch in me that bears no fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, so that it bears more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Stay in me, and I stay in you. As the branch is unable to bear fruit of itself unless it stays in the vine, so neither you unless you stay in me. Now, yes, this man having this vision, and I need you to understand that today, as the Father opened up, this is also symbolic of the two men next to him when he was hanging at the stake. Remember what happened with the two? The one rebuked him. The one was saying, save yourself. Save yourself. Let's go look at Luke 23. Let's go to Luke. So we can put this all together to understand the revelation that the Father is trying to bring us here today. Luke 23. From verses 32. And two others also, evildoers, were led with him to be put to death. And when they came to the place called Golgotha, they impaled him there, and the evildoers, one on the right and one on the left. And Yeshua said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they divided his garments and cast lots. So we see exactly like Joseph's garment was torn, so that they cast lots over Yeshua's garment. And the people were standing looking on, and the rulers also were sneering with them, saying, he saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Messiah, the chosen of Elohim. And the soldiers were mocking him, too, coming and offering him sour wine, and saying, if you are the sovereign of Yehudim, save yourself. And there was also an inscription written over him in letters of Greek, and the Roman and Hebrew. This is the sovereign of the Yehudim. And one of the evildoers who were hanged was speaking evil to him, saying, if you are, you see, one of the evildoers speaking to evil to him, saying, if you are the Messiah, save yourself and us. So the one was evil, but the other responding rebuked him, saying, do you not even fear Elohim, since you are under the same judgment? And we indeed rightly so, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this one has done no wrong. And he said to Yeshua, Master, remember me when you come into your reign. Now, isn't that exactly what he's saying? When you come in to the palace, remember me. Do you understand? Remember me. And he's saying, and Yeshua said to him, truly, truly, I say to you today, you shall be with me in paradise. Now, this is exactly what we see in these two scenarios over here. This is exactly what we see happening today. There will be those that will allow the Father to be the fruit of the vine. There will be those that will be willing to be crushed. There will be those that will be willing to be like the butler, that was the one, that cupbearer, the one pouring out. He was pouring himself out on the Pharaoh. He was pouring the wine out that was crushed of the grapes. Are you willing to pour yourself out? Are you willing to be that crushed? Are you willing to allow him to be able to come and crush you? So that he may pour you out, so that you pour yourself out on him. The Pharaoh representing right now, like Yeshua, being the one that we are pouring ourselves out onto. But let's look at the baker. And the baker, we see then, it speaks, and he says in verses 40, the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good. And he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream and saw 3 white baskets were on my head. And in the uppermost basket, all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation of it. In 3 baskets are 3 days. That within 3 days, Pharaoh is going to lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree. And the birds shall eat your flesh from you. And on the 3rd day, the Pharaoh's birthday, it came to be that he made a feast for all his servants. And he lifted up his head, and the chief cupbearer and the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief cupbearer to his post of cupbearer again. And he placed the cup in the Pharaoh's hand. But he hung the chief baker as Yoseph had interpreted to him. And the cupbearer did not remember Yoseph, but forgot him. So is this not Yoshua? Yoshua on the third day died. Yoshua on the third day, he died. Well, Yoshua died and resurrected on the third day. On the third day of his resurrection, he comes either for those, when his resurrection, for those that have received him, for those that have surrendered, for those that have laid down their lives for him, he is going to get them to come at his feast. And they are going to rule and reign with him at his feast. But for those who did not choose him, for those who did not choose to surrender their lives, for those who did not lay down their lives, where are they going to be? They're going to be able to be outside. Exactly as we see here in the story. And this is why, even when Quibus was speaking, and he was speaking about Yoshua and sin, this is what Yoshua did for us. Yoshua died, and on the third day he was resurrected. Resurrected so that what? So that we may understand that he has come to be able to do what? To save. And we need to understand that we need to make a decision to follow him. If you want to be my disciple, you need to deny yourself, pick up your cross and follow me. You need to deny yourself. You need to be pressed in a wine press. That's why we sang that song, the new wine. The new wine is paying a price. The new wine does not come with a price. And that is what he had to do. He had to pay a price. And that's what we need to understand today. All of this is teaching us where we are in the time, in the world of where we are today. For us to be able to be the set-apart people of the Father, we are going to have to pay a price. If you are going to want to be a remnant, you're going to have to pay a price. And the price is going to be the crucifixion of your flesh. And that crucifixion of your flesh is going to now, it's presenting itself more than ever. There, that vaccine has already been, it's going to come out. It's rolling out one after the other. And South Africa, maybe it might not come as soon as what is coming out in the other nations. But let me tell you, it's going to come. And we need to understand one thing. Just like Joseph right now is a foreshadow of Yeshua, Joseph right now is a foreshadow of who we need to be as the remnant of Abba Yahuwah. Joseph had to be faithful to the Father, whether he was in prison, whether he was in Potiphar's house. Joseph had to be faithful to the Father. Are we going to be faithful to the Father no matter what? How many times I've cried to the Father in my own circumstances, and I've cried to him and I say, Father, why have you allowed this in my life? And then Father will say to me, do you remember Joseph? I said, what do you mean, Father? What must I remember about Joseph? I'm not finished with your story. Joseph also thought he was finished with his story. Joseph thought he was finished with his story when he landed up in jail. And he thought, well, I had a dream. I had all these prophetic words. You showed me all these things. And now he lands up in jail. And that stayed another 2 years after he interpreted the dreams. Another 2 years he sat in jail. After he's interpreted the dream, after he said, remember me when you come to the Pharaoh. And they didn't remember him when they came to the Pharaoh. And another 2 years passed. Because Joseph was going to have to learn to put his trust and his faith in Father's timeline and in Father's timing, and that Father's timing. And Joseph's time was taken out of that prison. And where did he come to? Next week we see, where does he come to? Straight into the palace. Is anything for you to have to lay down now? That's what purpose was trying to receive, to reign and rule with your king. Whatever it is that this life is still got to offer, whether it be the next 3.5 years, however much time it is, if you are going to have to die, let you make the decision today to die. Because to die is to live. And if it means I must die in my flesh in this area of my life, let me die. Because I will live for eternity with him. I will reign and rule with him. I have been destined for a palace. I have been destined to reign and rule with a king. I have been destined to be able to have thrones being given to his remnant, to his faithful ones. Are we willing to come to that place? Are we willing to surrender? If we're still arguing and we're still fighting about a little thing in our flesh, if we still cannot surrender this one thing, if we still can't come into obedience, what are we doing? We are nullifying ourselves from the greater inheritance of Joseph, like Joseph coming out of there straight into a palace, given a signet ring and being able to be put second in charge. He became the most powerful man of the world, basically, because the nations came to feed in that place. So if they're going to kill us, if they're going to revile us, if they're going to speak bad against us, if they're going to scoff us, if they're going to put us to death, it doesn't matter. This is not your story of this land. This place is not your inheritance. This is not your dwelling place. This is not where you belong. This is not your dwelling place. Your dwelling place is to reign and rule with him in the millennial reign in the land of Israel for 1,000 years. And no one is going to keep you out of your inheritance. No one except yourself. Is what you will make when the time comes. So I end there. And I say this is just how the Father opened up this Torah portion for me. And it's a powerful word. It's a deep word. It's deep. And especially when we understand the things unfolding. So whatever little sin that is still in our lives, whatever little thing we're still grappling with, there is no more time. We need to now lay it down. We need to lay it down. So Abba Father, I just want to thank you for your word. Because just like we are now in the time of Chanukah, what was the time of Chanukah about? The time of Chanukah was about the time of Maccabees, when there had to be Mattatyahu that had to get up. There was Judas that had to get up, that had to stand for the fact of your word. They had to stand for righteousness, just like Joseph had to stand for righteousness. Just like Joseph had to stand and say, I will not bow my knee to the spirit. I will not bow my knee to the spirit of lust. I will not bow my knee to this woman coming against me. I will not bow my knee. Father, just like it was in the time of this very season, of this very time, Vashti stood against the king and said, I will not parade in front of you. I will not. But there was an Esther. There was an Esther that came forth. An Esther that said, I will bow down. I will bow. I will come before my king. I will lay down my life for my king. I will lay down my people. The Maccabees, one of them, were willing to lay down their lives for your word, for your Torah, for obedience to your word, to see your glory being reestablished in the temple. Are we willing to be able to see your glory being established in our worldly, in our earthly temples? Are we willing to be able to lay down our lives? Are we willing to be able to lay down, to bow our knee and be able to say, whatever it is that stands in my way, crucify my flesh, Abba Yahuwah, because I want to be obedient to you. And I want your glory to be made manifest in this earthly temple of mine. I want your glory to be made manifest. And it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what comes my way. I will not bow down. I will not bow down to anything except for you. And whatever it is that is in me that is not according to your word, it must bow.